chair a meeting of the Presidential Working Group on Disability at the Union Buildings in Pretoria. In his recent reply to the debate on the State of the Nation address, President Ramaphosa said government's medium-term strategic framework for the years 2020 to 2025 should mainstream the empowerment and support to people with disability across all government departments and programs. Let's go there live.
And they should be utilized as important platforms for advancing the work that we have to do. So this Presidential Working Group, having been reconvened once again, we're reconvening it so that it can advance this transformative agenda, but do it in a much more collaborative manner in terms of the way that it functions, in terms of the way that it sets up the various processes that will inform its work. So this group will advise our office on measures that we need to embark upon to empower the persons with disabilities as government so that we can plan together and also be able to look at the budgets that are put in place to advance the work that we need to do, but as well as come up with programs, programs that we will all agree on for implementing the objectives of the NDP. So this group is expected to advise our office on the steps that are required to institutionalize the right of persons with disabilities to represent themselves in all public entities and fora. The working group is also expected to advise our office on measures that will economically empower persons with disabilities. And we should do so in the most effective way. Now, we have international obligations as a country, such as the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and this one needs domestication. Having been adopted at the UN level, we need to make sure that this type of convention is domesticated to be truly and fully South African. The working group should advise on how we accelerate the domestication process. It is significant that the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development at the UN level includes explicit references to disability. The issue of disability in the 2030 Agenda features in a number of sustainable developmental goals, ranging from education to social to political and economic inclusion. Now, we are, as you know, a signatory to the 2030 Agenda, and we are committed to achieving and advancing these goals that are set out in the 2030 Agenda. A significant recent development on the continent was the adoption by the AU Heads of State and Government Summit, which we attended in January in Addis Ababa, where the Africa Disability Protocol was adopted. Now, this protocol provides a legal instrument to promote, to protect, and to ensure the full and equal enjoyment of all human rights by all persons with disabilities and to ensure respect for their inherent dignity. Guided by these global and continental agreements, we hope that this working group will provide advice on how we also speed up the implementation on the white paper on the rights of persons with disabilities. Now, this is a platform that I would like us to utilize as place where we have dialogue and where we exchange ideas. And as I often say to my colleagues in government, we want people to come up with gems, really outstanding ideas that we can then utilize to advance the cause of people who are living with disabilities. And if we can do so, I'm sure that we will be able to really do effective work and ensure that the work that we need to do is not stalled and we do not have lapses of long periods where we do not even meet. This is also a place where we must together develop strategies to address a number of issues, and some of those are the prejudice, the ignorance and the neglect that persons with disabilities often face in their interactions with government, in the private sector and across society. We should be bold enough to deal with the real issues and say them as they need to be said. And the issue of neglect is an important one, and I see it playing itself out almost on a continuous basis, and I'd like to see it stopped. I interface with it and encounter it quite a lot in cabinet committees, when Deputy Minister Bokopane Zulu, for instance, and Minister Masuta get documents, and it is known that they need to get documents that are readable, and people just neglect this and don't give them right-sized fonts and documents that they can utilize effectively, and so their access becomes a real problem. So that is neglect. And we now need to raise our antennas and make sure that the issue of prejudice, the issue of neglect, but also ignorance is addressed in a frontal manner. We approach these tasks from the understanding that government is responsible for enabling the adoption, the harmonization, and the implementation of national legislation, policies, programs, which will have an impact also on attitudes. However, the whole of society must contribute towards the realization of the rights of persons with disabilities, and we must engage in particular with the corporate sector to also ensure that they have policies and strategies for, amongst other things, the hiring of persons with disabilities, appropriate training and skills development programs, and ensuring easy access into workplaces and other buildings. The disability report in the last census conducted in 2011 estimates that there are approximately 2.8 million persons with disabilities in our country. The report bears testament to the progress we have made to advance the situation of persons with disabilities. In the education sector, for instance, there has been a discernible increase in the number of persons with disabilities enrolled in all levels of the education system, right up to tertiary level. Special school enrollment went up from 64,000 in 2002 to 120,000 in 2015. And enrollment of learners with disabilities in ordinary schools went up from 77,000 in 2002 to 121,000 in 2015. And yet, despite all these advances, it is estimated that approximately 500,000 children of school-going age with disabilities still remain out of school. And this is a serious indictment against us as a nation, as a country, because we often glibly say that we now have universal access at school level. And yet when you drill down a little bit more and you look at these figures, they belie this notion and assertion that we have universal access. And we therefore need to address this. And it's important that this should be brought to light. It should be brought to the front of the nation's agenda and through this type of working group. So here, this is a platform that we utilize to raise the nation's conscience and consciousness as well on issues and challenges that people with disabilities face in our country. For us, this is a huge challenge. With respect to employment, there has been disappointing progress, we must admit. In December 2017, employees with disabilities constituted just 1.3% of the workforce of designated employers in both the public and private sector. Persons with disabilities constituted 0.9% of the public sector workforce and 0.125% in the national government departments. Gauteng was the only sphere of government to exceed the 2% target, reaching 2.18% by December 2017. Government continues to provide assistance to persons with disabilities in various spheres, including through social grants and other programs. As of December 2018, 150,000 care dependency grants, 1 million disability grants, and 215,000 grant in aid allowances were being disbursed by government. We therefore have an important foundation from which to accelerate the pace at which we are changing the lives of persons with disabilities and their families. In addition to the broad range of measures we need to take in this regard, one of the areas that has been a source of contention over several years has been the location in government of the coordination of issues relating to persons with disabilities. And this matter has been raised by so many people that I have come across, both people living with disabilities or with disabilities and others. Now, as I announced during the State of the Nation address, and may I say on 2 occasions, we are reorganizing government to make it more efficient, much more suited to the developmental tasks that we have to grapple with as a government. We plan to have this process finalized by the end of the term of this administration. In May, we are keen to hear the views of the working group to inform our considerations on this issue. So you could say that this working group is taking place at a timely moment in the broader scheme of things as we are in a bit of a transition from a structural point of view as we are reorganizing the structure and the organization of government. So it gives us a great opportunity, and we would like to hear your thoughts, your views on this matter, which has been raised repeatedly by a number of people. Last year, Cabinet approved the first annual report on the White Paper on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. I trust this working group will engage with this report, identify the successes, the challenges, and the gaps that need to be filled. This will inform our approach to the implementation of the White Paper. We are committed to ensure that the interests and rights of persons with disabilities are effectively mainstreamed across all departments in the next medium-term strategic framework for 2020 to 2025. This must be accompanied by an integrated information system that is able to track performance against targets. Every state organ must be reporting substantively on the inclusion of persons with disability within the respective mandates that they have. That is an important one. I'm glad to see that maybe 2-3 people amongst us like it, to a point where they applaud. And I take it the others don't like it, so that's why they didn't applaud. Now, we are also working with renewed vigor and commitment to ensure that people with disabilities are part of a cohesive society in South Africa. We are working to ensure that they have equitable access to education, to health services, to employment, social security, and all opportunities that come with the benefits of living in a democracy like ours. Last week, I participated in the debate on the opening of the National House of Traditional Leaders. Participants, and these were kings and queens and, all traditional leaders of all sorts. They raised their concerns about the provision of facilities and services to persons with disabilities in areas under their traditional authorities, in particular in the rural areas more broadly, because they decried the fact that in the rural areas facilities are just not there to cater for people with disabilities. This is an issue that we need to pay attention to, appreciating that traditional leaders can be important partners in addressing the concerns that we all have. We should see this meeting as the first part of a new and reinvigorated journey of cooperation and collaboration. And we say this advisedly because for us, this is the new dawn. This is a period of renewal. This is a period where we want to look forward, where we want to work together. And it is infused by the spirit of sending one another. We're sending each other, one another, to do the work that needs to be done to make our country a country that is populated by people who enjoy the rights that our Constitution has guaranteed them to the fullest. So, in this meeting, we have an opportunity as government to engage with you all, to listen to you, to understand the challenges you experience, and also to work together to find solutions. So this presidential working group, therefore, gives us an opportunity to identify catalytic interventions that will change the lives of persons with disabilities meaningfully, regardless of their age, their gender, their socioeconomic status, their race, where they come from a regional point of view or whatever. Also, the type and severity of the impairment that they have. This is the opportunity that we have to make sure that we do actually address the challenges that people with disabilities have in a very effective manner. It is platforms of this nature that gives us also an opportunity to listen to one another so that we can fulfill our constitutional mandate to build a much more inclusive society for all. So I want to thank you all for coming to this working group, and once again to apologize that it has taken all these 3 years before we meet as we are. And as I said, Cabinet did consider all the importance of all these working groups and decided that much as other people, by the way, you might have heard, other people criticize us for having all these working groups. They just say, working group, working group. But for us, these are platforms that have a great deal of efficacy. We find that we're able to interface and interact with various stakeholders in our society, in our country rather, to find solutions. So I'm saying we apologize. We're going to make sure that we hold these meetings as we should. And I'm quite determined myself that our interaction should be meaningful. It should lead to finding solutions on everything that we do. With those words, I welcome you and I declare this presidential working group open so that everyone can then talk. And if you don't want to talk, hold your silence forever. But you are here now to talk as loudly as you possibly can. The meeting is open. Thank you very much. As I am the chair and no other, the attendance is, as I think set out in the document you will have received. I can see that we've got really good attendance. I haven't been advised of any apologies, but if there are apologies, they are noted. And now I come to the most dangerous part of the agenda, which is the approval of the agenda. And I want a proposal for the acceptance and approval of this agenda. I have a proposal there and I have a seconder. The agenda is adopted. Is that agreed to? Agreed to. Now, we will now move to part 2.
There you have it, President Cyril Ramaphosa addressing the working group on disability, which, as you heard him say there, hasn't met since 2016. The working group is made up of different organizations, especially NGOs that are in this area. Some of them, the South African Deaf Youth Development Project, the National Association of Persons with Cerebral Palsy, the SA National Association of the Blind and Partially Sighted Persons, Disabled People of South Africa, the Global Mental Health Peer Review Group, the Deaf Federal Association of South Africa, and they're all represented at quite a senior level, their chairpersons, their CEO, or their presidents, and the aim really, as the president was saying, is to give disabled people equitable access to all public services, but also ensure that they are able to enjoy the fruits of democracy. That will be an interesting story to follow, but that's the president of the Republic, President Cyril Ramaphosa, addressing that group at the Union Buildings in Pretoria. Let's take a break.